One of the most researched topics in retirement planning is how much someone can safely withdraw from their portfolio. The most famous example of this is Bill Bingen's research, which ultimately led to what many people know as the 4% rule. I also have an entire video discussing that rule if you'd like to learn more about that. But there have also been countless studies on portfolio allocation, stock versus bond exposure, and how much risk someone should take before and during retirement. But there have actually been very few studies focused on a much simpler question. Does the timing of your retirement distributions actually matter? In other words, should retirees take distributions monthly, quarterly, or annually? Could the timing itself improve the odds of your retirement success? And to be clear, that is what we're talking about today. We're not discussing guardrail strategies, dynamic spending approaches, or changing your withdrawal amounts based on market performance. We're also not talking about whether the 4% rule is the correct withdrawal rate. Instead, today we're talking specifically about the timing and frequency of distributions from the portfolio. For example, if two retirees withdraw the exact same annual amount, but one person takes it monthly while another person takes it annually, does that impact portfolio sustainability? At first glance, many people would assume it would. It feels intuitive that taking distributions less frequently would allow the money to stay invested longer and therefore improve outcomes. And that is exactly what Stephen M. Horan from the Department of Economics and Finance at the University of North Carolina, Wilmington, studied. Horan analyzed this question using 4 different models. The first model used random market returns. The second used a simulated market with autocorrelated returns. The third randomly selected historical return periods from actual market history. And the fourth used historical returns in their original historical sequence. He then tested each of those scenarios using monthly, quarterly, and annual withdrawal schedules. Now, I do not want to spend time walking through the mechanics of the study itself, but you can go read his article if you'd like. I do think the conclusions that he finds are extremely important and worth listening to. And surprisingly, the primary takeaway was this: retirement withdrawal frequency does not influence portfolio sustainability. This is contrary to what most people would probably think, but I would encourage you to read his study to see if you'd agree with the takeaway. In other words, if someone is withdrawing too much money from their portfolio, changing from monthly withdrawals to quarterly or annual withdrawals is not going to save their retirement plan. They're just withdrawing too much. The frequency itself was not the determining factor. And honestly, I think this is an important reminder because people often focus on very small optimization decisions while ignoring the variables that actually matter most. Now, I have to say, none of this is individual recommendations or advice for you or your finances. All that I'm talking about right now is a study that does not know your situation or your finances. So please do not make any changes or take any of this video as a recommendation for your specific financial situation. Now back to the topic. According to Horan, financial planners and retirees should instead focus primarily on 3 things: withdrawal rates, volatility, and taxes. And I want to emphasize those 3 things because I believe they can be large drivers of your retirement success. First, withdrawal rates. If distributions are too high relative to the portfolio, retirement sustainability becomes very difficult regardless of your distribution timing. Second, volatility. Large market declines, especially early in retirement, can permanently damage a portfolio because withdrawals continue while the account balance falls. This means that a proper portfolio allocation that is market resilient is very important. And third, taxes. Tax efficiency can dramatically impact how long a portfolio lasts, which accounts you withdraw from, capital gains, Roth conversions, Medicare premium adjustments, and required minimum distributions can all materially impact retirement outcomes. If you're curious about how to do this, I have a video titled "The Data Behind Asset Location" that I will link here. Those 3 variables mattered far more than simply choosing monthly versus quarterly distributions. But Horan did make another important point, and this was perhaps the more practical takeaway from the study. He stated that retirement spending patterns should influence the withdrawal pattern in a way that maximizes time in market. Or in simple terms, you should generally avoid taking large distributions significantly before you actually need the money. If your spending occurs monthly, there may not be a reason to pull an entire year or 2 out of the portfolio in January and allow it to sit in cash all the year. Doing so may unnecessarily reduce the amount of time investments remain compounding in the market. Instead, distributions should generally align with actual spending needs, not because it dramatically changes portfolio sustainability, but because keeping money invested longer is usually more efficient, according to Horan. Horan's second conclusion summarizes this very well. He wrote, financial planners and retirees should focus on matching retirement withdrawal frequency to cash flow patterns to increase retirement utility and decrease transaction or financing costs. In other words, your withdrawal timing should be built around how you actually spend your money, not around the belief that monthly versus annual withdrawals will somehow dramatically change retirement success. And I think that this is a good example of something that we see often in financial planning. Sometimes the things that people worry about are not the variables that actually matter most. The evidence suggests that the real drivers of retirement success are sustainable withdrawal rates, appropriate risk management, tax planning, and controlling spending during difficult market environments. Those decisions tend to matter far more than whether distributions occur monthly, quarterly, or annually. So don't spend your energy with that decision. Thank you for watching today. I really like doing these videos, so if you also like them, please click the like button below and subscribe so I can keep doing this. And again, if you're curious how to optimize your taxes in retirement, click here.